Our focus tonight now, Governor El Rufai stands by his statement on Godfatherism. Is there something under this strong voice? And also, what is with the back and forth in Miyetti Alah? This is Plus Politics. I'm David Alabi. The Minister of Interior, retired Lieutenant General Abdulrahman Dambazau, has denied allegations of giving the Miyetti Alah Cattle Breeders Association any money. But who really does Miyetti Alah represent? Joining me in our Lagos studio, we have Lulu Elegbe, a public affairs analyst. Good to have you join us. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
And we also have the Lagos State Chairman of the Liberation Movement, Rahman Dambazau. Welcome once again.
Yeah.
Now, our focus tonight is really on Miyetti Alah, but let's start with who does Miyetti Alah necessarily represent? Some have come harsh on them and say the group is known for killing and raping and maiming and a whole lot more. Is that a true face of Miyetti Alah?
Honestly, no, I don't believe it is. I mean, let's start from the beginning. Miyetti Alah was a group founded in the 60s, 70s. It was supposed to be a group representing Fulani pastoralists. That was why it was set up. And for the first couple of decades after its formation, that's exactly what it was doing. But because of, I guess, maybe climate change, changes in weather patterns, those sorts of things, a lot of pastoralists moving around the country or moving around certain parts of the north or even beyond the borders of Nigeria started to push further in country towards the middle belt and those areas in search of grazing land for the cattle. Because Miyetti Alah, when I say Fulani pastoralists, I'm referring to people whose entire cultures and livelihood is based on raising livestock. So when you have these people coming further into the country in search of those grazing lands, you start to have these conflict situations with farmers because I guess inevitably you have situations where cattle start to destroy livestock that's affecting their own
farmlands.
Yeah, sorry, to start to destroy farmlands, and that starts to affect farmers as well. So you start having these conflict situations between the two, and unfortunately, it's devolved into, those conflicts have taken on a life of their own. So when you say, is that the true face of Miyetti Alah, what you talk about raping and killing? No, not really, no. Have some of their members been involved in these things from the press reports? Yes, it has happened. But would I paint the entire organization with that brush because of that? No, I wouldn't. I don't believe that.
Rahman, with all of the reports we've had in terms of herders, farmers clashes now, Lulu here says that all of these reports don't necessarily represent the entirety of these pastoralists. But now, what do you make of Miyetti Alah, in your own opinion, before we delve deeper into all of these reports we are having?
Yeah, I think my view is the Miyetti Alah has been in the news for a couple of years now, and the major worry, which is that they're given a larger-than-life stature as it is now, because in the news we hear they're asking for money, and when you ask for money and life is involved, it means that you're asking for ransom. And when you kill, or you want to be forestalled from killing, and you are being offered some certain amount of money, it means that you are taking a fledge further into becoming either a terrorist or a bandit group that is using that a means of livelihood that people know them for before now as a cover-up to inflict pain and a lot of suffering on the people. Because these old issues snowballed when they had crisis of farmers and the others challenge, and then of course we now hear of cattle rustling. The major challenge of the Miyetti Alah, from what I know, is that the cattle rustling was a major challenge for them. And people who are perpetrating this crime are among of them, from one part of the country to the other. But what did they do as an organization to nip this in the bud? That snowballed into a lot of things that has created a lot of crisis for every part of the north, even into the north central, and even into the southeast and southwest, as you can see. Because now you see suddenly somebody carrying, who is meant to be moving with animals in the bush.
And a stick now wielding
and a stick
arms.
carrying an AK-47. What does that mean? Are you telling me that you are using AK-47 to protect those animals, or you're using that to perpetrate another kind of fraud? And from the report that we've heard from Miyetti and some part of the southwest now, the scenario is that the challenge is now with us. So we cannot define if it's Miyetti Allah, cattle breeders who are carrying AK-47 that are perpetrating this kidnapping on the highways, or it's the Boko Haram that's infested the southwest. So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves, that that is generating from the point of view of these cattle headers coming down into every part of Nigeria.
Okay, now let's shift focus to a recent meeting with the Minister of Interior as well as Miyetti Alah. Now, the federal government says that they did not pay any money in all of the meetings with Miyetti Alah. And the Minister of Interior said in Burn Kirby that the focus here is on ensuring that the killings stop in Zamfara State and other states. What do you make of this? Because you talked about negotiations here where they are requesting for money. But what should now be the clear terms? We know government can always come up with a front and say no ransom was paid or no money was exchanged.
In the Nigerian situation, of course, I hear what the Minister of Interior said, that no dime was exchanged. But we know when kidnappings are done down here, in the face of the media, you hear nothing. But underneath, you hear that a lot of ransom has been paid. Even in the case of Kaduna State and the Southern Kaduna, you hear what the governor said at the point. He has to pay this bandit from killing. So in this case, yes, let's take it for the face of it that, yes, no ransom was paid. But the question is, why this crisis on endlessly? The crisis has turned the whole nation upside down right now in such a way that you cannot differentiate who is perpetrating which crime or what. And I think that the Minister of Interior has a lot of work. He has his time is limited now, but if he wants to score a more A's in the face of Nigerians in the role that he's been employed to do, which is the provision of security of life and properties, it need to bring, which is what it's doing, bring Miyetti Alah to the table and let them define who among you, which categories, which groups, which splinter groups is perpetrating this crime, because they need to be brought to book. Because yes, you can go and hand in gloves to say yes, we want peace, but at the same time, we cannot begin to negotiate forever. We need to begin to bring people to book so that it will serve as deterrent to others who want to begin to perpetrate those crimes under that ambience or under that clove of association of cattle breeders in Nigeria. Because the question is, how well are we going to go on with this menace?
From the closed meeting that the minister had with Miyetti Alah as well, do you expect that we'll see a decrease in the spate of kidnappings and killings within the north, talking about herders, farmers, clashes, and a whole lot more?
I think we're conflating completely different issues, right? Miyetti Alah, because of what they are, what they're supposed to be as an organization, and the things that have happened with regards to clashes with farmers and killings and all that, it's a different issue from the cattle rustling, from the banditry, from the kidnapping going on in parts of the north, including Zamfara. A lot of, for example, what is going on in Zamfara goes beyond farmer herdsmen clashes.
Exactly.
There's the legal mining
banditry,
issue. There are all sorts of issues.
A whole lot more different.
A lot of it has nothing to do with Miyetti Alah. So my point is, let's not, the assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, the assumption seems to be whatever is going on in the north, and maybe even, well, including north central, and this is where I have an issue with it, because the assumption seems to be that this is or this is either Miyetti Alah, whether it's a splinter group of the main organization, or at the very least members of the organization.
Do you think the government is
perpetrating
shooting
this.
or having negotiations with the wrong bodies?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure there's any way to, if that conversation between the minister and the Miyetti Alah was based on the Fulani herdsmen and farmers clashes, then that makes sense. Then they're talking to the right people, because that's where the conflict is. If the issue is about kidnapping, ransom, banditry, and all that other, then I don't know that for a fact, but I don't know if that's the right group they're talking to, because remember that in every part of this country, in every part of the world, there are good people, there are bad people. You're going to find kidnappers, you're going to find armed robbers, you're going to find criminals among every single ethnic group in the country. So I disagree when I hear that where you have, like on the Kaduna-Abuja highway, for example, where we've had all these spate of kidnappings. Where are we getting the information that it's Miyetti Alah guys that are perpetrating this kidnapping? I'm not sure where people are getting that information from. It might be, I'm not saying it is, it isn't. I'm just saying, how do we know it's them? But we're so quick to assume that it's these guys that are doing this. The people doing it are criminals, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying we need to separate the criminality of what these guys are doing from what the main organization. It's very possible that it's members of that group that are doing this, but I don't believe that every single act of violence being perpetrated in the north has to do with Miyetti Alah. I think that's where I have an issue with it.
Now let's also now look at reactions from Tunde Bakari, that's the serving overseer of Latter Rain Assembly.
Yeah.
And it says that it is shameful for the presidency to even think of putting the herders group, that's Miyetti Alah, with the likes of Ohaneze, Indigbo, as well as Afenifere. And it's simply unacceptable. What do you also make of this?
I think they're not in the same category. One is a group of people who are, fostering the development, the growth of their race. And one is an association of, people who are into commercial,
Because these
breeds.
groups are the bodies that government sits with to have conversations.
So if you compare Afenifere, Ohaneze, and Miyetti Alah, then there's something wrong somewhere. Then it means that you are saying that Miyetti Alah is just a front for a group of people representing the North. That's what it means. That's what it means in its entirety. And I think I found it very degenerating to say Miyetti Alah and Ohaneze or Afenifere are in the same group, because otherwise, why didn't you call Arewa Consultative Forum, the ACF, in there? So it's, when we utter statement, we need to hear ourselves to create a balance and don't begin to, create unnecessary tension in the polity, because he who comes to the law must come with clean hands. He who make a statement in position of authority must weigh the balance of that statement in such a way that you don't send the wrong signal to the wrong people. Because at the end of the day, the outcome of it, you will not be able to contain it in such a way that you have to now, do a lot more effort in trying to correct that wrong that you've done, and which is what I found happening a lot in this. Somebody shoots in this direction, before you know it, they're fighting back to try to correct that error.
Lulu, I see you nodding your head now. Do you think this is an illogical comparison?
Of course,
omitting Arewa Consultative Forum and having Miyetti Alah there?
Yeah, it is. On that I agree, because if you're going to make that comparison, you compare Miyetti Alah with I don't know if because
with the Bushers Association of Nigeria,
we have the Miyetti Alah. Remember that this pastoralist thing. I mean, on the one hand, I guess I can sort of understand the cultural reference, because Fulani pastoralist goes beyond commercial raising of cattle. There's a cultural element to it. So on the one, but in reality, there's a central body that I don't want to say fights for, but purports to look after the interests of certain ethnic groups in the country. That's not what Miyetti Alah is for. On the Igbo side, it's the Ohaneze group. On the Yoruba side, it's
Afenifere.
Afenifere. on the Hausa on the northern side,
ACF.
it's Arewa. So if you're going to make that comparison, those are the three groups you compare, not Miyetti Allah. There are other groups, there are other subgroups in both the Southwest and the Southeast that you can make that comparison with. But it's making that is, again, if I wanted to play devil's advocate, I get the cultural reference, but no, it's not.
But
it's
we
not
tag
logical.
a whole lot of importance on these bodies. Do you think we've seen enough of representation from these bodies in terms of contributing to national development, engaging government back to back? Because beyond just the headlines we have, we never see the follow-ups.
No, I don't think so, and I think it's the same with. I mean, these groups. It's the same, in my opinion, with the Christian Association of Nigeria. It's the same thing with, I think it's called MURIC, the Muslim Rights Council. It seems their interest is supposed to be for the larger body of either it's Christians or Muslims or Hausas or Igbos or Yorubas, but the focus always seems a lot narrower to me. And it almost seems as if the people that head these organizations are more interested in, I want to say personal, not benefit, but more like personal, I'm thinking of the right word
Are you
to
trying
use.
to say they're also compromised?
Maybe not compromised, but I think their focus is too narrow for the kinds of bodies that they're supposed to be. Because if you have a group like Afenifere or Ohanese or Arewa saying that they represent Yorubas or Hausas or Igbos, then people from those groups should be able to see how these people are representing them. I'm a Yoruba person. I don't see what Afenifere does for me, to be honest. I've got Igbo friends, I've got Hausa friends. If I ask them, I bet they would say the same thing. They're not sure what Ohanese is doing for them. Does it? So when you say you represent
You have the reactions on
interest,
political happenings, but does that tilt the pendulum anyways?
Sorry, say that again?
You have their reactions on political happenings, but does that necessarily tilt
no, it doesn't.
the pendulum? That's the question everyone asks.
No, it doesn't, because at the end of the day, like you said, when you start hearing, the times you hear these groups is when there are political discussions, for example. We're talking about 2023, for example. The Ohanese is insisting that it has to be an Igbo president. Afenifere is saying it has to be you. And these are the kinds of silly conversations that I personally associate these kinds of groups with. A few weeks ago, I think it was the head of the Christian Association of Nigeria, one of those groups, saying that I think the Speaker of the House of Reps must be a Christian. And I was looking at it and thinking, how does any of this make any sense?
How do we give relevance to these bodies now? What do you expect from them, especially looking at the spate of insecurity, killing, kidnappings, now talking about Arewa Consultative Forum, and also looking at the Miyetti Alah group putting their house in order so that we don't necessarily tag them wrongly?
I think, let me come from the Miyetti Alah point of view, and then the president of Miyetti Alah some time ago had made comment. When the Benue killing happened, he was justifying the happening. And to a lot of Nigerian sensibility, that was wrong. And he even said that if certain things that do not happen, conditionality, there might be a repeat. That is not a positive, constructive way of engaging the people, the mindset of the Nigerians. Government as a body, has a right to put them to order by correcting them, by channeling them to the path of how to communicate in terms of crisis like that, because people are pained. Then Miyetti Alah, as an association of cattle breeders, need to rid itself of the bad eggs. Same way we talk of other institutions, associations.
The question is the how.
The how is simple. The how is they need to come up with a with a new methodology. Nigerians are saying that in the modern time that we find ourselves now, you cannot be moving cattle around the country anymore. You need to station them somewhere like a ranch where you can come down south.
on the grazing bill, and you know the status of that as well.
Yes, where you can come round and get your feed and get to feed them, so that we can begin to embrace modernization of how to do things. And the way, if Miyetti Alah need to be spoken to, that is what I'm going to say. Because if they keep grazing around, there's no way there will not be conflict.
How can they help this with the current grazing bill now?
How they can help this is in some part of the north, they've been allocations of grazing lands apportioned to them. And I think they need to begin to show us example of how this will work by, starting an incubation point and saying to all Nigerians that this is what we're doing. This is because if you're doing a lot of work, you need to communicate to the people, because people need to hear and see, demonstrate to us how you're going to carry out all this. Because when that is done, then this believability will begin to grow among the people. And when believability grow, tolerancy will be there, because they know that you can't get it right the first time. You need time, to get it right over a period of time. And then in terms of the advocacy group, which is Ohaneze, and the advocacy is on different platform for the race in which you represent. For the Yoruba race is the Afenifere. Of course, they fall short in some areas. In some areas, they uphold. But what we're saying to them is they need to uphold themselves together and become a formidable force in such a way that every region has a group that represents them.
You see that happening? Because now we've just had just concluded elections. We have governors-elect, we have president-elect, we have the vice president-elect, and other offices coming into play. So do you think now we'll see much more active engagement? Especially, everyone is quick to say that we've had this whole track record of everybody doing nothing. So to what extent now do you think things will change and we hold our leaders accountable, especially talking about security here?
Yeah, if you note what happened in the North now, shortly after the elections, the mindset of the ruling party is that power will shift, 8 years to the North, 8 years to the South. And what happened after the election? Shortly after the election, you started hearing the fact that, no, I think the North should keep power for another period of time. And this is the role in which now, you can see the Indigbo, Ohaneze is saying, no, power should come to us, the South. The Yorubas are saying, no, I think we earn it, we work towards it, we work towards it, we work for it. And now, the effect and the work of Afenifere needs to start now. I think they've started already, but they need to now make it more robust. They need to, create the face of different advocacy for people to hear. Because the Dawn Commission, for instance, is to integrate the Yoruba nation together by development, by infrastructural development, economic development, and integration of the people, so that the advancement of the race and the region will be better off in the federated state of
Wrapping up
Nigeria.
conversations now quickly, Lolu, in a sum, how would you say, or what do you expect this time around from the groups of the likes of Miyetti Alah, Arewa Consultative Forum, Ohaneze Ndigbo Christian Association of Nigeria, all of these bodies this time around to ensure that at the end of the day, we have quality representation, we see Nigeria move forward, and there is oneness in representation?
Honestly, I'm expecting more of the same, if I'm being honest, because I've always had this issue with regional identities in Nigeria, ethnic identities. I'm a proud Yoruba person, but I see myself first as a Nigerian before anything else. And so I think that's probably why I have an issue with groups like Afenifere.
So the divides along ethnic lines
because
are irrelevant?
It's not that they're irrelevant, but I think they're too emphasized in Nigeria. And so with groups like these, if they're going to keep pushing, if Afenifere, for example, is pushing for their agenda
closer to home, some would say.
Yes, they are, but what is home? Because if they're pushing for a Yoruba agenda, the Ohaneze is pushing for an Igbo agenda, Arewa is pushing for a Hausa, there is bound to be conflict at some point. It makes it harder to see yourself first as a Nigerian before any member of any of those groups. And that's what my issue with those sorts of groups. I'm not saying they don't have their roles or the useful parts that they play. I'm just saying that I think those groups, I just think they're too emphasized, and that's part of what affects our unity.
The presidency as well, which is supposed to be our unifying factor as well. What's your message to Mr. President as well to ensure that in all of the different areas of the growth of the nation, be it security, the economy, etc., what really is your message this time around?
Well, I hope he can do more for Nigerian unity than he did in his first term, because one of my biggest criticisms of the president was that I think in the way he's reacted to a lot of these things, especially the Benue killing, he did more to damage national unity than most of his predecessors. Because, I mean, politics is perception, and they say perception is reality. When there was a particularly bad one that happened, I think it was in January 2018, and the president was silent about it. Close to 100 people, over 100 people were killed. There was not a single word from the president personally. And this was when some of these guys from Miyetti Alah came out and were making this ridiculous comments. We had ministers going on TV and saying really silly things. We had some of the president's spokespeople, including his main spokesperson, coming on TV and making these ridiculous statements. And not a single time did the president come out and say a single thing. And for the life of me, I didn't understand. Over 100 of your people have been killed. And it wasn't the first, second, or third time. That was just the worst of those ones. And it happened, the first time I heard him talk about it was when the campaign was kicking off.
Well, some would
And
also say until justice is served, all of these people carrying out or perpetrating these killings, kidnappings, etc., until we have punishments being meted out and they're being held, well, nothing would definitely change. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Lulu Elegbe, as well as Rahman Adabi.
Thank you.
It's now time to take a quick break. When we return, we'll be talking about El Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State. Stay with us.